Welcome to Life Generally, hosted by me, Jen Lofstrom,
and me, Jen Tran.
We are Jen Squared, and this podcast is about life as a Jen.
Yay!
Hey besties, it's your girl Jen. In this week's episode, I'm doing it solo. Jen Lofstrom couldn't be here because of scheduling problems. However, you will get to meet two great individuals who I used to work with, who also got laid off, but about a year before I did. These individuals are UXers, user experience designers, the same field that I'm in. They are Kirsten Fanker and David Ciccocioppo, and I had the pleasure of interviewing them to see what's going on in their lives after being laid off and how they are leveling up. In case you might miss Jen Lofstrom's voice, she'll be back at the end of the episode. So, here we go.
Hey besties, I want to introduce to you some of my colleagues from my former life, Kirsten Fanker and David
Ciccocioppo.
Yes, Ciccocioppo. Thank you. For some reason, David, I think of your last name as a Topo Tico, the drink.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of what we had, a little mnemonic that we used to kind of help people kind of make sense of it. It's a lot.
So, besties, this episode is my two former colleagues. They got out of corporate. And who likes to start first and tell the besties about yourself?
Go ahead, Kirsten.
Well, my last corporate job was as a senior UX designer for a SaaS company.
Mm-hmm.
And my plan was to stay a couple more years and then leave the corporate world and go back to freelance as a way to bridge my retirement, because I'm at that end of career kind of thing. And so I actually had no choice, basically. I got laid off, and I started out as a web designer in the early 2000s, working for small businesses through a printing company. And these businesses were just starting to understand what websites were to advertise them. So I learned a lot about client relationships, working with developers, navigating the sales funnel. But I wanted to go deeper into other areas, and I'm glad I did, because I found UX and I got a lot of good experience from it. So now I'm in freelance and starting my own business. So that's where I'm at now.
Nice. And David?
Yeah, I went to school for graphic design and worked at an ad agency and another ad agency that kind of transformed and evolved into a digital consultancy. So we did a lot of digital marketing, but also a lot of social media campaigns and website building, that kind of thing for our clients. And then right at the beginning of the pandemic, I was laid off from that job that I was at for, I think, about 13 years, and had worked my way up to creative director. And kind of had to repivot and found my way into UX, where I felt for the first time in a long time a real good sense of belonging, and something that I kind of could really wrap my creative brain around, but also my problem solving brain around, and my empathy and understanding of user needs, that kind of thing. And got involved with this SaaS company that you both are very familiar with, and really enjoyed it. I loved the team. I loved the company. I loved just everything about it. And I felt supported in all of aspects of my work and my personal life by this team. And, had received a promotion about halfway through my time there, and had just been assigned a senior designer to work with me and partner with me on some of the projects that I was working on. So I was really looking forward to continuing to advance in my career and stay with the company for, as long as it made sense. But through no fault of my own that I can imagine, or anything that I was expecting, I was also laid off with Kirsten a while ago and put in a position where I had to rethink my career and kind of where I go from there.
Yeah. Do you guys remember the moment when they gave you notice? Like, that one pivotal moment when like you thought something was good and then it did not turn out to be a good messaging system or a good like message that they were trying to convey?
I'll go ahead. I remember it really vividly, obviously, as something you would remember in this case. But my partner works for their tech company, and they've been going through a lot of org changes, that kind of thing. So we were able to commiserate on a lot of stuff that we were dealing with in terms of that kind of thing and layoffs and all that. And I felt pretty confident, but still a little uneasy. And then it was, over a span of maybe a couple days, I just felt something was off. And then my one-on-one with my direct supervisor got bumped to like, I don't know, 8:30 in the morning on a Friday. And I'm like, something's not right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember logging in and it was my supervisor and somebody I didn't recognize, and I knew immediately. And before they even said anything, I think I texted my partner from the other room and was just like, I'm out. And
Wow.
the rest was a blur.
Yeah, similar for me. I knew as soon as I saw my manager's face that it was the day. And, I had a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It was just the market was kind of going in that direction
Mm-hmm.
as far as it had its days, as far as like the early last 5, 6 years. I mean, UXers were getting paid pretty well,
Yeah.
and I kind of thought maybe it was a little bloated and companies were looking at their numbers and trying to thin it out a little bit. And, you know, seeing postings for job openings for junior designers was like another indicator they were trying to save money. So,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, I don't have anything against that. It's being in this world of business for 30 something years. I've been in these cycles at least 3 times. It happens like every 10 years, but it's getting faster now with all the technology.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, businesses got to be businesses. They
Yeah.
got to make
Business
tough
has to business.
decisions. Yeah. And just rolling with the punches, I've learned that. Just, you know, I was worried I wouldn't find another job in the market, and I was right. The ageism in interviews was pretty real too. So
Mm-hmm.
somebody that has my experience and knowledge, it should have been really easy for me to get another job. So I'm taking all what I learned and doing my own thing.
Yeah. When was the moment when you realized I should go on my own? Like I should be a freelancer, start my own business. Like how long did it take? Like did it take like 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, or like this epiphany happened, like, divine intervention or something, like it was all saying like, I think you should open your own business.
For me, it was a few months.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly thought that this was going to be a pretty temporary thing. And, I could parlay my, recent success at my former company and, everything I learned actually working on the job and everything into another, at least lateral role somewhere else, and they were generous enough to give us a transition package and that kind of thing. So I had a little bit of, I think, a little bit of a cushion for a while. And then once I realized how saturated the market was and is, and how competitive it was going to be out there for all the, the UXers, like, I got into the situation where the market was bloated and yeah, companies were kind of trimming things a little bit. Then I started realizing, well, yeah, I need to figure out a different way. And it was really difficult for me to make any kind of a firm, conscious choice that this is the way I was going, because I had always been, somebody who loved to go to work and loved to not have a boss necessarily, but just, I never thought of myself as having that entrepreneurial spirit. I was a good laborer,
Mm-hmm.
Back in my days as pizza delivery guy, I was the best pizza delivery guy, and that's always kind of been who I've not necessarily wanted to be, but I thought that was kind of my role. So it took me a while, and it wasn't until a former employee at an very old agency, reached out and offered me a couple projects that I thought, okay, this is something that is viable.
Yeah. So I would take it that you started your own business or went freelance for survival for yourself and your family versus staying and trying to search in the job market and be like, maybe something will happen and fast forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I was
Yeah.
when I started to do, work for myself. And it wasn't so much even survival at that point. It was almost like, let me, dip my toes in these waters and see how it feels. Then it was a matter of when I did have some work to work on, it was a matter of balancing my time between continuing to look for a full-time role and handle freelance projects because I still, I'm on the fence of like where I want things to go. And, I really appreciate the comfort and the stability of having a full-time role. But I realize that in this day and age, that is a little bit harder to come by unless you've got, just that magical connection with somebody somewhere that's going to kind of give you a leg up.
Yeah. Kirsten?
Yeah, it's a little different for me because I was planning on going this direction a little later than sooner. But so I was pretty ready. It wasn't really about survival for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely taking a bet on myself. I've kind of done this on and off for 10 years in between corporate jobs, just have something on my resume, that I was doing something. And then the last time I kind of created this branding and I'm still, trying to position myself. And I really love having my own processes and way of doing things and not after all my years of experience, I didn't want to like help a company anymore. I wanted to help small businesses and get them, give them my expertise without this huge agency budget, It's just kind of that's my where my passion has always been is
Yeah.
like a digital presence for these small businesses that don't have time or technology to do it themselves. So that kind of the layoff pushed me a little bit, and I'm kind of glad it did in a way.
The next question I'm going to ask is, so what fears did you have before leaving? And then which ones were real versus imaginative? So in a sense of like, okay, Kirsten, you mentioned like this was an on and off theme, right? But now you're living the freelance world with no
Yeah.
safety net. But David he's now living it. It doesn't like it's like before being a business owner, what was the fears? And now what isn't really, was it all played in your head, this fear, or is it now just like, it's not that bad?
That's a really interesting question. And yeah, I think the dichotomy between me and Kirsten is pretty noticeable because like she said, she had some thoughts about where she wanted to go and she wanted to end up here. And I really kind of admire kind of the way that she was thinking about it, like using her years of expertise in the corporate world to kind of help out, smaller businesses that typically wouldn't have access to, our level of thinking, that kind of thing. For me, I didn't have any fears necessarily. I didn't really have any fears about losing my job. I mean, I have, anxiety, I would say, what would happen if, but it just was one of those things that you always say, it's not going to happen to me. So yeah, I would say my biggest thing that I wasn't prepared for in a positive way was feeling like, okay, I can do this and I'm doing the same things that I do every day. But like Kirsten said, like she has her own processes and ways that she likes to do things. And, not being in the corporate world allowed you to get away from all of the corporate responsibilities of, quarterly progress checks and all hands meetings that would eat up an hour and a half on a random Wednesday when you could potentially be doing other work and all of those types of things. And it really kind of freed me up to really explore, when I'm most productive myself in terms of, getting work done, but also, doing things that I have to do around the house and doing things that I enjoy doing. So from that perspective, I wasn't prepared to not be as afraid. I'm still afraid about, when the next paycheck is coming and, if my next project, that kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
that would be my biggest fear is like, you don't think you have the same stability that you had, but the stark reality of the layoff situation is that there was no stability. We were just kind of living in this, not necessarily a dream, but it was just at any moment, people in offices that weren't even in our state made a decision that, this list of people had to go.
I think in the 6 month mark, I realized this is not so bad. I'm actually learning more about myself and reflecting more on who I am than I was at a company.
Mm-hmm.
I had so much trouble with my self reviews when I was working at a corporation because I didn't have time to reflect, because I didn't have time to succeed or fail on my own terms. It
Mm-hmm.
was somebody else's. So, I'm like, okay, I think I can do this. So, yeah, a lot of it has to do with the corporate red tape, not red tape, but all the stuff that they have to follow as far as a business. It's not like they they can or can't do it. They pretty much have to. So,
When you guys decided to go on your own, did you have like a clear business idea or like a clarification of what you had to offer for, your freelancing, your business gig? Like you knew exactly what to do.
Kirsten, go ahead with this one.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been doing this on and off since I quit my job at an e-commerce site or company back in 2014, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of started thinking, hey, I can build websites again. And I got some clients. I did a lot of volunteer stuff, but just doing it on and off in between these corporate jobs gave me a lot of, I guess, groundwork. And with AI and having it as an assistant
Mm-hmm.
in pretty much every business aspect, like lead generation or whatever you want, makes it so much easier and a lot more fun too. And so, yeah, it's my positioning is still changing because I find myself going into more of the medium-sized businesses and not really the mom and pop.
Mm-hmm.
So I might kind of steer my positioning toward that. So every day is a learning experience, and it's another reason why I enjoy it. So
Hmm. David?
Yeah, so I think it was probably a good 90 days after my layoff that I even started to consider it. And like I said, a former boss from an agency a long time ago reached out to me after I had made a kind of snarky, self-deprecating post on LinkedIn because I would just realize that so much time had gone by and was hoping to be networking and doing all these things. And,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of got put on the wayside and just like, it was really hard to see the value and keeping up with LinkedIn and posting things and all that kind of stuff. But I think in hindsight, that was the catalyst to getting me a little bit of traction and getting the eyes of somebody that knew me, knew my work ethic and all that kind of stuff from even years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we had talked and we talked about a project that they thought I'd be a good fit for, it was really easy. And in this case, I was working with some old colleagues from many years ago, and it was like, fit like a glove kind of, and I forget what the analogy is, but it felt right,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't seen these guys in a while and getting on a Google Meet call to discuss projects, everything just seemed to flow really well. And I was really shocked and surprised and excited. And like Kirsten said, like, when you've got the benefit of AI tools that can help you kind of self-manage yourself and do a lot of the things that I relied on other people for in
Mm-hmm.
a corporate world, that was really helpful. And it helped me with structuring my day, structuring, how I approach projects, all that kind of thing. And so I was, yeah, really kind of surprised at how easy it was and kind of exciting and gratifying to have that as something that I'm doing on my own for this company and really kind of serving a need, which, I'm sure Kirsten, you've kind of felt the same way. Like when you're working directly with somebody that has chosen to hire you for a particular project, you feel like you're being seen as the expert. And it's a great responsibility, but it's also reaffirming that you have come this far in your career that somebody's going to hire you and pay you money for something that you know a lot about and you enjoy doing.
So, can you guys tell me your first 90 days actually looks like when you opened your business?
Well, for me, I guess it wasn't clear yet that I wouldn't return to a corporate job. I was still kind of interviewing and hadn't fully shifted my energy to this business. So, and then, my husband and I took our yearly trip to Turkey
Mhm.
last October. But when I got back, I was like actually relaxed because I didn't feel guilty for taking time for myself. And at my last company, PTO was like more stress before and after. And
Mhm.
so this time it was different. And that's when it started to feel real. And I wasn't going to go back.
David?
Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, taking leave corporate setting is nerve-wracking. Um, yeah, my first 90 days, I don't even think that I thought that I was in business for myself. I thought that I had kind of found like a part-time job or whatever. And I was certainly still applying and still thinking that something better would come along. And actually, it was about that time when I secured an interview and kind of worked my way up to the final interview after I think four total. And the last one was a big team interview with I think seven other people in the room. And I thought and I walked out of the last interview and texted my soon to be wife at that point. I was like, I nailed it. And I was
Mhm.
just like, I thought for sure. There was like no way. I was like, I got this. And we had our wedding and took a lot of time off, came back and I had to follow up and they're like, yeah, we went with somebody else. And
That's so
that's
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
yeah, I was like, okay, all right, this isn't going to be as cut and dry as I imagined. So, in the meantime, yeah, I just continued to kind of plug away at my freelance projects. And anybody who I came in contact with at that agency, I would just say, hey, let me know what else you guys have me to work on. I'd love to help, because when you're in the weeds, you don't really see your way out of it, and it's hard to ask for help.
Mhm.
Um, when you're working at an agency or a corporate setting, it's hard to take the time to get somebody to train up and help you out with whatever it is you need help with. So I was trying to do my best with, just, sticking my neck out there and asking for additional projects, that kind of thing. And so far, it seems like it's going pretty well.
Nice. So, to lead into so what did you think was the hardest? Like you mentioned about going, if you were to go back to corporate, the hard part's training up, advocating for PTO for yourself. But like in the first 90 days, what do you think was the hardest part of your daily tasks of realizing you're doing this?
I was tired of interviewing. Like they were not technically hard, but emotionally.
Yeah.
And it felt like managers were really not interested
Yeah.
in what I had to say. And a, I felt really inauthentic
Mhm.
and through the whole process, and it was difficult for me. So it just didn't feel like myself. And that was hard, but that's me reflecting.
Mhm.
So I was like, hey, this is something I don't like anymore. That was the hardest part.
Yeah.
I think for me, I still, want to be able to tell my parents that I got a job, like I'm still at that stage in my life. When we talk, how's the job hunt going, son? Like that kind of thing, like
Yeah.
Yeah,
to think about and deal with. And yeah, I think it's just my personality is such that like I just want to be working and I want to be useful to somebody. And um, with the freelance situation, it's very easy to be out of sight, out of mind
Mm-hmm.
with the people you're doing work for. And I try my best to, like I said, kind of be a squeaky wheel and make sure that they remember I'm out here and I'm kind of at least part of the team for
Mm-hmm.
now. So yeah, I think for me, it's just going to be a matter of, is there a clear delineation similar to what Kirsten kind of experienced where she realized, you know what, this isn't for me. Like I don't need to be, prepping for days, for, a stuffy interview where I don't feel comfortable and they don't seem to feel comfortable and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I still have yeah, I definitely still have one foot in the water, one toe in the water of the corporate
Yeah.
world.
So then what do you think has been the easiest first 90 days? And
Maybe saying no, because usually at a company you're like, sure, I can do that. And so I surprised myself on how easy it became to like turn things down that just weren't right for me. Even like job interviews, I'm like, this is not what I want to do.
yeah.
So, you know, and like there were several potential clients that I turned down because I saw red flags, just the more you do it, the more you spot them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was getting better at that and saying no to those kind of things to keep my sanity.
Yeah.
Funny because I'd say probably the exact opposite for me is true. It was easiest to say yes and kind of exciting because the one thing, if you remember from the corporate world or, wherever you're working, you typically are working on, one product or one particular project for months, if not years at a time. And you're really siloed and kind of a specialist in one particular area. And you're dealing with users that only do this one task that you're working on. And, this feature that you're trying to launch, that kind of thing. But um, when you're working for yourself and you're working for freelance, you have the opportunity to entertain all different kinds of clients in all different kinds of industries. And if you can do a little research and learn enough to be dangerous in that particular market or industry, the UX and the design skills are at the core of it. And you can kind of translate those expertise that you have, across any industry, really. And so, yeah, I think being able to say yes to different things was the easiest thing for me. If I was even trepidatious in my own head, I knew that I could quickly, like I said, do some research and figure out what I need to know
Mm-hmm.
um, to help out with that particular project.
Mm. So when did it start feeling real? Like when you got your first gig or your first client and stuff, when was the moment it felt real? Like, was it when they paid you? Was it when you started doing the work? Like, when did it feel control is back to you again, you know?
For me, I started networking after I got back from my trip. I started finding different ways to meet people,
Mm-hmm.
even if it wasn't like for clients. Like I joined, what was it? Networking over coffee. It's like based in Greenville, and they have events in Greenville, but he has a really great virtual one every Tuesday morning. And it's a bunch of people that are either consultants that are looking for clients or like me came from the corporate world, have their own thing going on, and just talking about how to network and find new business. And so that's been great. And then, local networking events, small business through Alignable.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like LinkedIn, but more targeted. And so I found a lot of great networking opportunities. And that now it's starting to feel real because I'm seeing a lot of the same people
Mm-hmm.
at those events and building relationships. And if they don't become clients, that's fine. They might know people that need somebody like me down the line. It's never like gonna happen that day. You
Mm.
just have to go in thinking that way
Yeah.
and just talk to people. So that's when I kind of started understanding what it was all about. It's just relationship building.
Yeah.
And that's, people pay money to market themselves through all kinds of different avenues, and they don't think about building relationships first.
Hmm.
So,
I like
Yeah.
that tip. Like, don't expect going in and networking that this bridge or contract is going to just be there for you to
yeah.
sign. It's like, no, you have to nurture this
Hmm.
to make it flourish and or be fruitful. Yeah, that's a great tip. David?
Yeah, I think Kirsten, I think that aspect of what you just shared is pretty awesome because, you have ownership of yourself as, an expert. And I think, when you're in the corporate world, you're just kind of like, oh, like you said, Jen, like you know, you're a cog in the wheel and you're supposed to fulfill this particular role. But yeah, when you can go out and kind of market yourself and Kirsten, you're being really understanding of like this is a networking opportunity. This is a long game. It's not just like I'm going in here to try and close some deals right away. I think that's really important for people to understand and believe. As far as I'm concerned, I think it really felt real for me when I was working on a project with the agency where they were going after a new piece of business, and I was kind of the UX consultant on the project and making sure that, their web design proposal, was steeped in, good UX practices and all that kind of thing. And had a great working relationship up until right before the meeting, the pitch, and they actually asked if I wanted to fly out
Oh,
for the,
wow.
and of course I was like, first,
Jet setter.
I know. I was
yeah.
all like, how real is that? If they want to fly you out, I'm like, this is it. This is the start of my new life.
At first I thought that was they were kind of just making like a little, polite little invite or whatever. And then I realized that, no, they need somebody in the room.
Hmm.
And remembering, pre-pandemic days, if you're in a meeting and you've got people on site, it's so much more impactful than trying to have a call like that over Zoom. And it's even
Hmm.
worse when you have people in the room and then you've also brought somebody in via Zoom or whatever else.
Yeah.
So I recognize that this is really important for me to get there. And I think I maybe spent 24 hours on that trip, but the pitch went really well.
Hmm.
It's great to see some folks in person and look at clients directly and talk about what you've been working on and what you are proposing and kind of like feeling that impact of what you're sharing and kind of what they're thinking in their heads and answering questions and all that. Yeah, that was pretty real for me. And, recognizing that, yeah, whatever it takes to help
Yeah.
out, job done.
What is your definition of success? Has it changed since you left corporate?
Yes. It's waking up and working on something I actually care about
Hmm.
on my own terms. Like, just the feeling I get when a client finally sees their website and it actually reflects who they are and they're really excited about it. And I know I've like succeeded in that space. But yeah, just doing what I actually want to do and care about.
Hmm.
And I'm still learning and evolving, but if that's my mission, then I'm in good shape.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, from my perspective, success, the idea of success or the label success has changed quite a bit. Like I said, in the corporate world, I was very much just, hey, what can I do every day to contribute to my company, to my teams, all that kind of thing, and be helpful and not be a burden or a drag on
Yeah.
anybody else and really get my job done and prove my value. And raises and promotions and all that kind of stuff were nice and helpful if they came along, but I never really overly pushed for that kind of thing. I just figured it all would happen naturally.
Hmm.
And in this world, I mean, success is being able to pay the bills um, for now, and that might evolve and that might change. I'm still trying to get a feel for it. And yeah, I mean, work-life balance has always been a measure of happiness and success for me, and that's not ever going to change. So,
Hmm.
I'm not going to ever be in a position where I feel like I need to put in 80 hours a week, working for myself to be successful.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That's just not going to be how I live. So, doing more with less in terms of, money and that kind of thing, while things are still trying to get worked out and building clients and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, what kind of corporate habits helped you and which ones you had to unlearn?
Well, like the structure, like project planning, communication, and then I have a MBA in marketing, believe it or not, that I got like almost 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually pulling from that now, which I really didn't need to when I was in a corporate job because I was being told what to do and, you know, it was a company.
Yeah.
What I had to unlearn was the need to perform for others, basically, um, and kind of version myself into to fit in that mold. So I didn't feel very authentic. I feel more authentic and true to myself now than working with a company. And it took a lot of work. Like, finally, after a year, I feel okay.
Mm, that's
Like, I
great.
feel like myself again. So
Like yourself of 7 years or of 10 years or 20 years? Like what
I
level of
would,
feeling?
hmm, hmm, good question. I think when I was working back in the early 2000s for the small businesses and going around with the project manager and meeting with them and talking with them, understanding their pain points, coming back and doing my thing. Like that's what I really enjoyed. And the way I learned website design was as a hobby.
Mm,
So that turned into something I really liked doing because it was kind of fun, you know?
mm-hmm.
So going back to that, it brings out the nerd in me. And I'm a big nerd. I, I admit it.
How about you, Dave?
I don't know. I kind of struggle with this question because it's all so different. Um, when we had just started returning to office, and that was a big shift back to that world that had its, pros and cons, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm fully remote again, having to schedule my own days and making sure on top of different calendars and that kind of thing, different email addresses. It's a little bit more chaotic, I would say, but I know that everything that I do when I sit down to do work in this scenario is work on my behalf for, my clients and my career. Whereas, yeah, there are certain expectations you have in the corporate world that, you have to abide by, and, you have to show up this many days a week and, you know, clock in or check in or punch in or whatever. And, make sure you get to some of the social gatherings and that kind of thing, and make sure you're seen on the all hands calls and all that kind of stuff that, you know, that you don't have to deal with anymore, which is nice. And so, yeah, it's not so much corporate habits that I picked up. Although I did, like I said, I really enjoyed having a team, not just, teams on my projects, but also kind of like, the greater UX team, and having peers that were always there, either in the office or, a Slack or a email away or whatever, just to kind of help be a second set of eyes to commiserate with, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
that's the one thing that's probably a little bit harder now, is to make sure that you kind of keep those kind of connections and you have some checks and balances for yourself, because it's really easy to get siloed and just be like, the only person working on this, so what I say goes, and it's going to be the right way. And, that's never a good way to go about it.
So, tolerance check. Has that changed now? During corporate and after corporate, do you guys have a different change of your tolerance level now?
Tolerance for what?
Anything. You're
Risk.
like for risks, for BS, like for
Uh,
anything, for risks and BS.
well, I've been laid off a couple of times. So there's no such thing as safe
Yeah.
um, at a company, no matter what they say. But I'd rather take like a calculated risk on myself than putting security in someone else's hands. Like, I can see through the BS now
Mm-hmm.
more clearly looking back. Like, oh, they said that people were first, though. It's like, no, not quite.
Yeah.
But as I said before, it's business. So you got to think a little more logically that way.
Yeah.
It's nothing personal at all.
Yeah, it's funny because I think my tolerance, whew, um, things have shifted in a little bit in a way because I felt like more empowered, I think, in the corporate world to kind of not say no to things, but to offer a different perspective, kind of push back when my initial thoughts or feelings or ideas weren't immediately, accepted by stakeholders or whoever. And now, when I'm even closer to somebody just being like, yeah, we don't want to work with you anymore, on a minute by minute basis, I'm a little bit more not on edge about that, but I'm understanding that it's a reality. And I'm sorry, this is kind of rambling. I haven't really fully
Yeah.
formed this.
Don't worry. You can ramble.
Um, but at the same time, I recognize the need to, yeah, to demonstrate my expertise and to, stick up for the recommendations that I have, the designs that I'm designing, all that kind of thing. And I think the feelings and the motivations are the same. I think there's just a little bit of less, I don't want to say mojo or bravado, but right now I'm a little bit more reserved in the way that I communicate some of the things that I might otherwise have been more carefree with, I guess, for lack of a better word.
That's very interesting. So, did you feel like there was like in corporate life, you had the protection of the organization until like they do budget cuts and you hear about them?
Yeah. Yeah, and if review time wasn't coming up, or if there wasn't a buzz about layoffs, it was like you were kind of insulated from, and that's the one thing, the one of the pros of the corporate world is that not that you can do whatever you want, obviously I'm not saying that, but you are kind of insulated from, so and so stakeholder or even your direct supervisor. If they don't like you for some reason, or you say the wrong thing, you have the wrong idea,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be like, oh, the next day, like that's really, I mean, unless you really screw up, obviously, but
Yeah.
like Kirsten said, she's been let go a few times, and so have I. And the first time it was a much smaller agency, and I knew the person very directly, and I understood, like, if we're losing our clients because of the pandemic and everybody's shutting down, I understand that. But then in the next case, it's, a huge corporation with plenty of money to spend on a lot of different things, including, you know, all hands meetings that probably have a value in the millions,
Yeah. Yeah.
based on how many people's time they're, using in sets and in production and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's just a different, I guess it's just a different mindset. And I haven't quite figured out what I prefer yet, I think.
Mm.
And I want to get to a place where I'm more on the lines of where Kirsten is at, and just being really sure of herself and sure of myself and my expertise and all that kind of thing, and knowing that I am worth the money that somebody is hiring me for.
Yeah. So would you say you're in a career midlife crisis versus Kirsten is kind of like in her era of like rediscovering who she was, Like it sounds like the both of you guys are in different, even though we're living in the same era, different mindsets of like where you want to be professionally. Kirsten is the happy, the sunshines and rosiness of it because of like she's tired of the BS, and you're trying to figure out your footing as besides as a UXer as yourself, but also as a business, whether or not how you're presenting yourself a certain way, the gameplay of like business relationships. And it's like, okay, or like the high schoolness of it in a sense of like, they don't like you because of whatever reason doesn't necessarily mean that they don't like you as a person. It just maybe the idea is not what they thought of, or you guys are not vibing on the same ideas. At the same time, you want to respect of all this accrued knowledge and data that you've accrued throughout your whole career and be like, well, in the past, this and this happened. If you don't want to take my advice, that's fine. Like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
totally see where you're coming from, David. Oh, Kristen.
I was the opposite. I didn't talk much at all in
Mm-hmm.
the corporate world. I was not confident at all in my ability. And I'm not quite sure why, but I mean, now, uh, you know, I've been in the corporate world for 30 something years, and that's probably a big difference between David and I, like, is our age too. I don't want to throw age in there, but I've been out there for 30, 35 years, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been through all of the ups and downs of, the economy and business and understanding how companies work and in and out of freelance for 10 years or more. So it's like we have different experiences along our career journey
Mm-hmm.
that we kind of take from. So that's probably why we're a little in different stages.
Yeah.
Yeah. To your question though, I think, yeah, I thought I was in a midlife career crisis 5 years ago. And, I'd like to think that I'm older and wiser now and that this is not a crisis,
Mm-hmm.
but it's definitely a moment of transition, of course. Yeah, like Kirsten said, I mean, we worked together on projects, we worked really well together. But yeah, and I think one of the reasons why that was the case was because we were so different, both in terms of our career journeys, but also in our mindsets, the way that we approach things and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear about how happy Kirsten is with her move, and the things have kind of been more defined for her, whether she liked it or not at the outset of the layoff or whatever. But yeah, I'm really happy to hear how she's kind of approaching this. And I know that one way or the other, I will get there as well, or maybe not. Maybe I apply and get an offer tomorrow, and then I'm like, oh, great. I'm back in the corporate world, and I'll deal with that, entrepreneurial thing later.
Isn't it like so? Okay, I have been laid off multiple times as well, so I know the ebbs and flows of that feeling. But it's like, okay, let's say you did get a gig, a full time permanent gig for you know X amount of years, and then they do another layoff, and then you're back into building your brand and all that stuff again. It's like, I don't think we are living in the 90s where job security is a little bit better versus, maybe the 80s, maybe a little bit more job security, but we live now where the market's always volatile. And it's like, whatever the organization wants to bet on and go full tilt, hence like AI, which that's why I got laid off. But like, in a sense, like the new next technology thing that's going to shake up whatever it is. And now that I'm noticing that, like, I think it's like everybody's going to get new jobs every 3 years because of whatever shakeup of the corporate culture, the dollars and bills that they have to pay or whatever it is. It's like, don't think you're going to be working at your next company for 10 years. It's more like, think about every 3 years you may be cycled out. Do you guys agree with that? Or would you be like, maybe it might be shorter, it might be longer?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've seen it, like I said, every 10 years or so when some new technology comes along. Like I went through the .com thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of like reassessed and kind of reinvented myself,
Mm-hmm.
got into, learned a bit about it. Um, I even got certified in website development or whatever it was back then, and then started doing that. And then the next thing was UX was the hot thing for designers.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned UX. You just kind of have to, constantly learn and reinvent yourself and market yourself to what this thing is if you want to stay relevant
Mm-hmm.
and get that next job. And you're right, it is moving faster because the technology is updating really fast. So,
Yeah,
and it's kind of
I
sad.
feel the same way. And I don't think that we have any idea of how fast things are going to start moving now based on, you know, the emergence of AI, but also AI really starting to take a strong foothold in everybody's day-to-day
Hmm.
work life, whether or not they're doing it in the corporate world or just on their own, and how much it's automating a lot of things that we do and toil over, I guess, in our day-to-day lives. But, as Kirsten was talking and kind of how she's gone through all the different phases, like I was kind of reminiscing about all the different roles I've had over the years and became like, yeah, you're right. I haven't been a UXer for 25 years. Like I've done
Yeah.
video production, I've been behind the camera, I've, just full on graphic design, creative director, all these different things that like, in that moment you think, oh no, but I lost my job as a UXer. Now I have to get another UX job. What am I going to do? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've reminded myself of all the other things that I can do if one of those things isn't quite as in demand. And I think that's what we have to kind of focus on. But yeah, the idea of having to do this whole rebranding and telling your story over again and kind of reinventing yourself every 3 years or less is not very attractive to me at all.
I'm pretty sure our besties want to know about the financial stability. Do you guys currently right now feel financially stable? It's been a year since you guys been laid off and have gone into business for yourself. Do you feel financially stable? This is not including asking about, inflation, gas prices going high, all that stuff. I'm just,
Understood.
yeah, I guess the status quo of 3 years ago, if we didn't have so much chaos right now.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you got to expect when you go on your own, it's not stable.
Mm-hmm.
Like freelance is, unless you get this recurring client and, guaranteed income every month, it's not stable. But that's not like the part you have to really learn. Like the first thing I did was build a budget and start tracking my spending.
Mm-hmm.
Then tracking my investments that I have and sat down with my financial advisor, worked out a roadmap to bridge from now to retirement without dipping into my investments. So we worked out a plan. So I'm tracking my budget for business separate from personal, things like that. Just making sure you're set up for success before you even get a client.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's not glamorous advice, but it's a really important thing I did. And it's kind of feast or famine. You get, really high paying one month and then crickets for 3 months. But
Yeah.
you kind of have to expect that. And because I had that plan, I don't feel as anxious. So that peace of mind is a little bit of stability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely would say I need to continue to work towards getting to a feeling of financial stability, and I think in terms of freelancing and kind of going about it on my own, it's just a matter of gathering more nuts, kind of like Kirsten said, like um so that when you have like the low times, you still have a little bit of a safety net. I'm wondering, Kirsten, do you pay yourself a salary out of an account that you have? Like how do you
No,
no. Okay.
no, I put it like in a separate business worksheet and then pull from that if I, have to pay for Claude Pro or something. So I've got like a profit and and costs and all that stuff in there too. So it's like personal and business workbook, but yeah, I don't pay a salary.
Not yet. Yeah,
I mean,
not yet.
Tax wise,
Mhm.
I do report it though, so
yeah.
FYI.
Are you doing it as DBA for tax wise? You're not putting yourself in as an LLC or
I have an no, I have an EIN as a solopreneur,
okay.
so
Okay.
I use that. And even though it's not that much money, if it's over a certain amount, you need to report it, as far as your profit. I've got revenue and then profit. So you put all anyway, that's like tax advice.
Like
There's a lot to take into consideration, but yeah, getting control of your finances is and really understanding where every penny comes and goes from is key, because I didn't do that until probably way later than I should have. I had and there are plenty of tools out there, even some that you kind of pay what you want, and won't mention them until they decide to sponsor this podcast. But there's budgeting tools that can help you consolidate all your accounts, everything that comes and goes. You can see where it is. I really kick myself because I should have done it 10 years ago, but now it's kind of like, gamifying my spending, because it's like, ooh, I want to see how low I can go this month.
so far, what is your guys' biggest win for the business? For your guys' business?
Getting offered a retainer for the agency that I'm doing most of my work with. And because that feels like, okay, they're seeing enough value that they want to put a number on me on a monthly basis, that they want to be able to call on me at any given time and bring me in on projects. And yeah, and feeling the trust that they had in me when they decided to fly me out for their new business pitch was probably one of the highlights so far.
Nice. Kirsten?
Yeah, it came through a fellow designer through one of my networking communities, and he didn't have the bandwidth to help this client he had. And it ended up being one of the smoothest freelance engagements I've ever had. It was for like a small asset management company.
Mm-hmm.
I used a lot of what my knowledge and planning that I developed in my corporate career and my MBA to kind of set that project up for success. I planned everything out by, task and kept the time. And so I did an estimate and then the real time, and it came out pretty smooth. And as far as my return, you know, like the hours I spent, effort involved, it was a very successful project. And then I worked with a fractional marketer for this company, and now she's with a different company.
Mm-hmm.
And she reached out. I was talking about this earlier and said, "Hey, I've got another client for you, and they want a retainer. So they want she wants me to help her, I guess, as a partner, who knows."
Yeah.
But so that, it took time, and it was it came from not where you would expect it to come from, another designer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who's also looking for stuff. So that was pretty cool.
Nice. What is the one mistake that taught you about business so far?
I think selling myself too short, like lowering my price and adjusting my services just to land a client.
Mm-hmm.
It cost me confidence early on, and you kind of have to be strategic about it, because if you keep, you know, if you don't meet them in the middle, you could lose them and all this stuff. So it's a very sensitive, I call it a dance,
Mm-hmm.
because you kind of have to be in sync with expectations and all this stuff. So the biggest mistake I think was I was too cheap.
Okay.
And I think a lot of freelancers have that problem
Uh-huh.
because they want to land their clients, right? So that's one thing I need to work on.
Yeah, I think pricing your services, I think across the board, I think particularly for women is the hardest thing that I noticed that even for myself, like, I mentally know my worth, but when I say it out, I don't know. Like the client or the person or whoever is probably like, oh, they're too expensive, but maybe they're not thinking about me in per se, like, oh, she's worth every penny. It's like more like, what is the business? What can the business afford? And whatever my pricing, how I'm pricing myself is.
Yeah. Yeah, budget constraints, like coming from, all the business experience I have, they have certain budgets set aside for things like website updates or whatever. And some of these companies are small and they don't have a big budget for stuff like that. So, coming in a little lower than industry says is sometimes okay. And if you want to build a relationship, you can, get that, I guess, respect and they like what you do, you can increase your price. So,
Yeah.
Trying to think the biggest mistake that taught me the most. I think honestly though, you know, if this is the path you choose and you want to make this your full-time endeavor, I think you need to do that. And I think trying to keep one toe in the corporate world and applying and following up and creating resumes for every posting and cover letters. I think it's, you could be, if you really want to do this, you need to put every effort into that and, going after clients rather than, trying to attract, full-time employers. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say to be really successful, this has got to be your one key focus.
Yeah. I believe in that in a sense, but at the same time, there's a sense of like, David, you are way ahead of me by a full year, and you kind of have like a framework of how to set yourself up for success. There's a piece of me that's trying, it's like kind of keeping my foot in two worlds. It's like the corporate world and dabbling into freelance or going on my own, and your business and your daily life routines. Like, has that changed? Has it gotten better? Or you're doing like 80-hour weeks? Or maybe you're just doing like, maybe 35, 40-hour weeks of like a real work-life balance. Like, how has that changed from corporate life and then till now, like on freelance or your own business life?
I've always loved the flexibility. Like I can go to a networking event at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, take time out during the day and learn like my vibe coding skills. So more flexibility and definitely not like the stress that I had
Mm-hmm.
in a company. So now I have the space to think because I'm like not as fast of a thinker. I'm very, I guess, thoughtful and steps that I take and things like that. So family's been great. My husband has been really good. He actually stopped working a month after I was laid off. So
Oh.
we're both at home,
Mm-hmm.
but he's volunteering with horses and I go with him sometimes, which is something I couldn't do, is volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't have the energy. Now I have energy for other things. It's not like a freaking 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. If I feel like working Saturday morning on something, I'll work Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, a lot less stress. And the commute, I don't miss that. My blood pressure's way down.
Nice.
It's funny. My cholesterol is actually way down from last year. It's probably, I told my doctor, I was like, probably 'cause I'm not going to Chewy's as much lunch anymore.
Probably. Those lunches.
Yeah, the chips and queso. So surprisingly, I would say my life is a lot more stressful these days.
Mm-hmm.
And I think not having one role, one full-time role, you know, even if it wasn't a strict 9 to 5, there was the expectation that during business hours on the workday, you were working towards your job, your career, working on the team that you worked on, working on the project that you worked on, et cetera. And that was my primary focus. And I was able to very easily at the end of the day, either hop in the car and drive that long commute home or close my laptop and move on with my life. And I think now, because I don't have that structure and, I'll have waves of going in and out of a great set schedule, between getting up and getting my kid to school and doing my exercises or whatever and getting into my day, that kind of thing. But then other times it's easy to kind of have a day where you're not as motivated or have a day that you're like completely frenetic and hyper and wanting to get everything done. And then it's, you burn yourself out for the next 2 days. And yeah, for me, it's been really stressful. And I've been trying to make up for, the idea of not being employed by taking on all kinds of other things and trying to teach myself 12 different new skills and exploring all manner of other employment opportunities that might, be my next AI proof role or whatever.
Yeah.
Using AI to do that, of course. And and then I stop and I sit back and think about my day and I just think, yeah, I've just been just running ragged because I've got this list of to-dos, my daily responsibilities, plus all these other projects that I want to keep moving forward. Yeah, honestly, it's pretty stressful.
Yeah. Thank you for your candor about that. Like, I think about all the business owners who got started that they are working 80 hours a day. Like my husband, he owns his own firm. It's a one-man show. And basically he kind of takes the Kirsten approach. At the same time, I think, David, I'm like you. I'm like a little bit frantic. Like when I pump out things, I will pump out things really fast, but I don't necessarily give myself the time to rest and therefore I'm just creating this sinkhole of a burnout bucket that is currently right now just taking me down. Like I haven't filled my cup with the proper stuff to recover. But at the same time, I'm always thinking like, oh, what is the next thing I need to be doing? What is the thing to make me move myself for the job market of whatever technology that is out there? And then the other things like try to take like Kirsten's methodology of thinking of like, how do I create a space for myself to relax and enjoy my life? Because it's like the end question is like, do you work to live or you live to work? And that's recently, as when I turned 40, that's when I really had this hard thinking like, dude, I have like what, 25 more years of work, maybe actually 30 more years to work. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? It's like that question's like my time spent. Is it worried about the bills I have to pay and all these things? Or is it the legacy that I may provide for the future and the generations? I always think about that a lot. And I'm a person that I don't even have kids. So I'm not thinking of like, oh, my kids are going to inherit anything, But yeah, sorry, Kirsten.
Yeah, I don't have kids either. And, I'm doing this mainly to bridge myself from now to, you know, retirement age or whatever. But, I was scared
Mm-hmm.
about what I was going to be doing. Like, do I really want to go into freelance again? Do I want to go to corporate? And it just took that experience of the last 9, 10 months. And like this year, I decided this is the path I'm going to take.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get clients, I focus on it. It's not like, oh, let's, go to happy hour now. But it's on those times where you don't have clients and you're kind of in between, that's like the part I cherish and I take advantage of, like going on a trip
Yeah.
or doing something that I couldn't do when I was working 40 hours, whatever,
Yeah.
a week for a company. So that flexibility is what I like.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, I think in my case, when I feel like I don't have enough to do is when I insert all of the things to do. And so if for whatever reason I'm kind of at a holding pattern on a project that I'm working on, or at a stopping point waiting for feedback or whatever it is, and I'm wondering what I'm supposed to do next, that's when I start to insert all kinds of other things that, I should probably just be taking a minute to refuel a little bit and relax and enjoy things rather than continuing to, or just prioritize things. If I'm going to do one thing that day, then make that the one thing rather than everything that I've been trying to catch up on.
Yeah. Do you guys have any advice for people who just got laid off or thinking about they should go business on their own, or maybe put two feet in two separate doors? Like, any advice for our besties out there who are maybe in this time as well, like that's discovering this
Yeah.
moment?
I honestly think a lot of people are designers are going to do this because they can.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're not prepared mentally, financially, emotionally, they have to rely on themselves in all those aspects because you don't have anybody else. It's you. You're an entrepreneur, and it takes a lot of patience and courage. But you gotta look on the other side of the coin too in that life. But if you're prepared, at least you get to succeed or fail on your own. And so that changes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'll kind of know when you're ready, if discomfort and staying in your position outweighs leaving, and you've done all the, financial and mentally prepare yourself and all that stuff, have a plan
Mm-hmm.
before you just quit. If you can sit with uncertainty without paralyzing you, that's a big one. Then if you're resilient and you fail, you come back, then I think you're ready.
Hmm. That's good tips, Dave.
I think we all know, deep down at our core, whether we're more suited for a corporate life or more of an entrepreneurial role. And I would say if you feel like you're pulled in one direction or the other, great,
Mm-hmm.
go for it, whatever that thing may be. And don't feel shame if the corporate life is your thing. And, pick up some freelance work if you need to and keep applying. Um, and if you were laid off and you really wanted to start your own thing, this is the time to do it. When you're in control of your own destiny, no one can pull the rug out from under you. And I think that's a big part of the difference between working for yourself and being hired by somebody else to do a full-time gig. And yeah, I'm no business expert, but like you said, Jen, I think we're going to see a pattern of this a lot more, and just these booms and these busts happening a lot quicker, and people scrambling to pull people on and then letting them go in mass.
Mm-hmm.
When the economy changes or something else comes along. But like I said, if you're doing, if you're working for yourself, you can pivot as you need to and go after the things that you want and are most important to you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, one more question before we close out. AI. Are you guys pro or con? And how much AI in your life have you introduced
All right, I'll go first. Absolutely anti AI in the sense that I don't want our evil robot overlords destroying the planet. And, you know, it's wild. I've been listening to the news recently and hearing all of the things that are going on with, the military, the US military specifically, and uh, OpenAI and Anthropic and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And it boggles the mind and it terrifies me to no end. That being said, I have, incorporated AI into my daily life in all kinds of different ways. And it was, an area that in the corporate world, we were kind of restricted to one particular platform just for safety and security sake.
Hmm.
And didn't feel like we really utilized it to the best of its ability. And now I'm kind of at this new renaissance, I guess, in my own working world or process of, trying to find out what tools are the best for what particular project, how reliable are they, where I can build in automation in areas that still utilize my knowledge and my expertise and my design skills, but also make my life easier and do things that would take me, you know, weeks could now potentially take me a few days, if not hours.
Yeah.
Uh, I've been experimenting. I don't know if it's vibe coding necessarily, building a couple apps, one that I had worked on 5 years ago and kind of brought it to life almost at a clickable prototype. I'm now trying to actually build. And then I've actually had this idea to start a nonprofit, and AI has given me the benefit of a whole entire internet worth of knowledge and expertise and best practices and similar use cases to get me kind of going on a process or a path to get that off the ground. And I, looking at the amount of um, info and knowledge I've been able to gain and real practical steps, literally in a matter of hours, I was just blown away. I was like, oh, we can get this done. This can actually happen. And this was just something that I was like, I wonder how you do this. And then it remains to be seen too. And I'm having a lot of love hate with AI because I'll get to a point where it, out of the gate of a prompt, it gives me something amazing. And I'm like, okay, cool. So then can we do this? And it's like, well, no, we can't actually do that. And then I have to iterate, over and over again to figure out what I actually need to tell it to do. And so, yeah, it's a love hate. Definitely don't want the world to end via AI, but
Yeah. I feel the
there are
same.
practical things every day that it's helping
I
me
think
with.
everyone feels the same.
Yeah.
It's like the big data centers coming up here in Austin and just the responsibility of AI, and there's like really no laws around it
Yeah,
yet.
it's the Wild West for sure.
Yeah, it's the Wild West, but if you kind of zoom into like David and I and you and how we're using it just for our daily lives and creating things, and it helps us organize our thoughts better and plan things out, and just taking away hours and hours of the boring stuff
Hmm.
and allowing for more creative thought. Like I just built my husband a recipe app in where he can just take some recipes from the internet and put them in a very clean, organized interface where you can create, edit, you know, all this stuff, share. It's got translator, English to German for his sister, so she can
Oh my
use the
gosh.
recipe. Just I solved a problem, a pain point he had
Hmm.
in about 2 days. So it's amazing how helpful it is, just taking that research and you don't need a developer anymore. As a designer, I mean, I know, front end code and all that as a website designer, but building a React app, I'd never done it before,
Hmm.
but there it is. So,
That's great. Okay. Do you guys have anything that you want to promote yourself of, like your businesses or anything for our besties?
well, mine is Orange Owl Design here in Austin, Texas. And I help small businesses create trust, credibility online, whether it's like a dog trainer or a remodeler or small asset management company, just by refining their online presence. And so it's orangeowldesign.com.
Thank you. David, do you have anything you want to promote?
I mean, you can always log into LinkedIn and find me and all of my various links and that kind of stuff. And yeah, reach out if you're interested in um, getting a hand with your UX design projects or just design projects in general.
Awesome. All right, besties. Well, thank you, David and Kirsten, for this interview. And yeah, we will see you guys next time. And hopefully, we get to, in a year or so, we can talk more about your journey of where you guys are now. And hopefully, it'll be a different tune, or it might be reinstating what you believed back then till that present moment. So I am excited to see you guys then. Hey, besties, Jen is back. So
What's up? What's up?
So, Jen, what do you think about the interview?
I am so glad that you took the time and you got to meet with both of those freelancers and people who are starting their own businesses. I mean, Kirsten, I really think her voice is so soothing. Like she should be doing meditation,
I
guided
know,
meditation.
right?
Like she could be on an app or something.
Girl,
There's a
Kirsten,
lot there.
if you want another side gig, like I know, you're building your design firm, but your voice, meditation.
She's got hustle,
Yeah.
but her voice is so not hustle. That's the crazy thing. Very relaxing.
Yes.
And David, I feel like a lot of people who are freelancers or are out there having their own businesses can really relate to it, right? Like
Yeah.
there's an advantage to a corporate job. There's advantage to some security and like not everything falls on you. The finances are not falling all on you.
Yeah.
You're getting a steady paycheck. But, when there's layoffs and things like that, is that also like secure? So it
Yeah.
really depends because it's, when you're rowing your own boat, it could be feast or famine and there's no guarantees. So it was a very interesting discussion and I'm so glad that they were able to be here for our besties and for me for some good perspective. It was really interesting. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah. So, Jen, what is your burnout meter?
My burnout meter right now is a steady. It's pretty. I'm below thriving for sure. I think exhausted would be the case right now. I just have
So
so
you're
many
above
things.
dead.
I'm above dead,
Yeah.
but still maybe on life support. So yeah, I just think that there's a lot of priorities happening right now and not a lot of direction within work and the world,
Yeah.
even. So I think that, when everything feels like a priority, then nothing is a priority kind of spiel. So
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
I can't wait for spring break. It's not that I'm actually getting a spring break, but I just feel like maybe things could chill out a little bit.
Yeah.
What's your burnout meter?
My burnout meter, I'm just content. I'm like content, not happy content. It's like more of the lower end of content. Like I'll manage.
A bit meh?
Meh.
A
Yeah.
meh?
The meh content.
We're going to add that to the thing now.
Yeah.
Just meh.
Meh. So what's your female health scale?
My female health scale right now is actually pretty interesting. I think that I met with my GP, but I also met with a naturopath slash like chiropractor because I have PCOS and a lot of my hormones have been out of whack and all these things. So we're looking at ways to actually for me to eat things and maybe do a gut reset. So big things on the horizon, but I want to feel healthy, and I haven't been lately. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. Like about I would say I'm like at a 5, but there's hope, It's
Yeah.
midway. What about you?
I'm 7, 8, my body's still doing its thing and I'm still working out. But my
Have you done the splits?
No, I have not. The split meter is because I am not consistent of the split meter. Like I should be doing more Russian splits to just force gravity to make myself do it, but it's a work in progress.
You can have a banana split once you do the splits.
A banana split with the splits.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Besties, I will take that picture when I achieve that. Look, we will all I will video this at this point.
You'll be in the splits holding a banana
split.
split. It'll be amazing.
I wonder if I should get some split pants.
It'll be bananas.
All right. So, besties, just in case you wanted to get in contact with Kirsten and David, in the show notes, I will show the link to Kirsten's design firm and her LinkedIn, as well as David's LinkedIn. And Jen, could you also tell our besties where they can find us?
They can find us on the gram, and that is life.generally with a J as our hashtag. So life.generally as our handle and hashtag and everything. And then you could go to Gmail. If you email us at Gmail, it's lifegenerally with a J at gmail.com. And we also have a really cool app now, right, Jen? Don't we have an app called Buy Me a Coffee?
Yeah, it's not really an app. It's a link to support our podcast financially. So, besties, if you like what you're hearing and want to support us, you can buyuscoffee.com/lifegenerally. So, if you like what you hear and want to donate to Life Generally, all proceeds will go into the podcast, obviously. Please donate at buymecoffee.com/lifegenerally. And you can find that in the show notes as well.
Look at us. We're growing every day.
So, Jen, do you have any last words for our besties?
I would say my last words would be banana split, but that's not actually what your interview was about. But I'm going to say, think outside the box, be willing to try something different, whether it's a side hustle or, start your own business.
Yeah.
Or start a new venture, career, whatever, podcast. Just think outside the box, guys.
Yeah.
What about you, Jen?
You know what? It's more of like, if you don't say that you want to do it, just do it. Now I understand the Nike commercials a little bit better. Like, just do it.
Right.
Yeah. Don't just think about doing it. Just do it. So that's my last words.
Great words.
Oh, thank you. Nike.
You're welcome.
If you're out there wanting to sponsor us, please do. Besties, if you work for Nike, help out some girls here.
You'll see us like wearing Nikes after the show.
Oh, girl. If it's, I would be sporting Nikes if they do like a dual like athletic professional wear, hands down.
You're like, we're podcasting, but we're also Nike wearers.
Exactly.
My son really likes Nikes. He wears them all the time. So, yeah, I'm all about it. Let's do it.
Okay. All right, then. We'll see you next time.
Jen Squared out!
Yay!
We're woo girls.
I know.